It's Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. Tim Walz alleged literal commie lover, trouble with ballot boxes in the well-known swing states Washington and Oregon, and the most terrifying 3 minutes you'll hear this Halloween week. Next on the AM Update. First, there's this from the UK Daily Mail. Tim Walz had a secret fling with the daughter of a high-ranking communist official during his 1989 teaching stint in China. Jenna Wang, 59 years old now, claims the VP hopeful showered her with gifts and seduced her at his pokey staff accommodation at No. 1 High School in Foshan, Guangdong Province. The lovers could not risk holding hands or showing affection in public because Wang's dad was a high-ranking figure within the Chinese Communist Party who would disown his daughter for fraternizing with a Westerner. The romance blossomed behind closed doors as they sipped tea, made love, and listened to George Michael hits, leading the then 24-year-old Wang to dream about marriage and a new life in the United States. No proposal was forthcoming, according to the UK Daily Mail, citing this source from the future Minnesota governor. And the shame of being treated like a prostitute, she says, eventually left her feeling angry and suicidal. Again, that's a report from the UK Daily Mail, which featured a photo of Walz and Wang together, so they're at least at the same place at the same time. Who knows the veracity of this claim? The biggest surprise, as I'm sure you've probably heard if you've heard this story, is that Tim Walz was in love with a woman. From one story allegedly involving the Chinese Communist Party to another, Chinese hackers engaged in a broad espionage operation targeted at cell phones used by Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, his running mate J.D. Vance, and people associated with the Democratic campaign of Kamala Harris. That's according to people familiar with the matter, speaking to media outlets like the Associated Press and Washington Post. It was not immediately clear what data, if any, may have been accessed. U.S. officials are continuing to investigate, according to people who are not authorized to publicly discuss the ongoing inquiry, and spoke on the condition of anonymity to those aforementioned press outlets. An FBI statement did not confirm the identities of any of the potential targets, but said it was investigating unauthorized access to commercial telecommunications infrastructure by actors affiliated with the People's Republic of China. The FBI said in a statement, quote, "Agencies across the U.S. government are collaborating to aggressively mitigate this threat and are coordinating with our industry partners to strengthen cyber defenses across the commercial communications sector." U.S. officials believe the campaigns were among numerous targets of a larger cyber espionage operation launched by China. It was not immediately clear what information China may have hoped to glean, though Beijing has for years engaged in vast hacking campaigns aimed at collecting private data of Americans and government workers, spying on technology and corporate secrets from major American companies, and targeting U.S. infrastructure. An arson investigation is underway after multiple ballot boxes were set on fire in cities in Washington and Oregon over the weekend. Hundreds of ballots were burned inside a ballot box in Vancouver, Washington, according to Fox 12 Oregon. The Portland Police Bureau also confirmed that an arson investigation is underway after an incendiary device was placed inside a ballot box in East Portland. According to KPTV, the fire in Vancouver was set at the C-Tran Park and Ride at Fisher's Landing Transit Center. Reports indicate that someone affixed a device to the outside of the box, which started the fire. The last time ballots were collected from the box was 11 a.m. on Saturday, so anyone who dropped a ballot in that box after that time, well, their vote is not going to be counted as of now. Also in Oregon, an arson investigation is underway in Portland after a ballot box on the east side of that city was set on fire early on Sunday morning. According to the Portland Police Bureau, around 3:30 a.m., officers responded to reports of a ballot box on fire. Security personnel working in the area had already extinguished the fire. PPB officers determined an incendiary device had been placed into the ballot box and used to ignite the fire. What I don't understand is why these are happening in the well-known swing states of Oregon and Washington. This makes no sense whatsoever. Of course, Oregon and Washington, you think of Antifa, but again, the one in Washington was in Vancouver, not exactly what you would think of off the top of your head as an Antifa hotbed. So what is the Democrats' closing pitch to the American public just 1 week away from the 2024 presidential election? Well, apparently it's masturbation and tampons in men's bathrooms. A new advertisement by a group supporting Democratic candidates shows a man involved in a solitary sex act being interrupted by a fictional Republican who informs the man that the GOP has banned porn nationwide. The new ad, which was posted to X by Demcast founder Nick Knudsen, shows a young man in his room alone watching porn on his phone when he's suddenly interrupted interrupted by a man who introduces himself as a Republican congressman and informs him that he is breaking the law. The advertisement, which was paid for by Progress Action, appears to be referencing the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, a conservative initiative, of course, that Donald Trump and his entire campaign has distanced itself from ad nauseum. In a later post, continuing to boast about the ad, that aforementioned Nick Knudsen said testing shows that ad had been effective on young male voters in focus groups. Also, there's this. Gwen Walz, the wife of Tim Walz, joined Katie Couric over the weekend to talk about how tampons in men's bathrooms in public schools is essential for learning.
You know, if kids are hungry in school, what that does to brain and learning, you're not going to learn to read. So if you're talking about learning to read and closing gaps, then you better take away the barriers for that. If that's tampons, then that's tampons.
So the Democrats' closing pitch, at least in some quarters of that party, is focusing in on the message that young men have the God-given right to self-pleasure themselves. And in other quarters of that party, you know, the God-given right for tampons in men's bathrooms and how that's essential to learning in public schools. Kamala joined Shannon Sharpe on his podcast yesterday and had some straight-up projection. She says if black men vote for Donald Trump, he's going to take their guns away from them.
Blacks for Trump. They feel that Trump is better for the black community. Can you explain the Donald Trump's history with blacks? Where did this come that all of a sudden, I mean, it's been like this because a lot of people used to say, I'm Donald Trump of the ghetto because he was, I mean, for a lot of blacks, not all, but for some blacks, he was, Madam VP, whether we want to admit it or not, he's revered by some blacks.
But here's the thing. The question for everybody, should he be president of the United States?
Okay.
Right? That's the question. Should he have the ability to sit behind the seal of the President of the United States when he says he wants to terminate the Constitution of the United States? You know what that would mean? In the Constitution of the United States is your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure, your Fifth Amendment right, your Sixth Amendment right to an attorney.
Well, a lot of rights going to be gone. The First Amendment.
But the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. Yes. Look, I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. I don't believe we should be taking anybody's guns away.
So that is Kamala Harris's closing pitch to Black America. The ultimate act of projection, saying if Donald Trump is elected, he's going to take their right to free speech and guns away. I don't know what more there is to say, but that is what she's saying. A Jewish man was shot in Chicago while walking to synagogue by a gunman who allegedly screamed Allahu Akbar, according to reports. Sidi Muhammad Abdallahi, 22 years old, was arrested following a shootout with police on Saturday morning in Chicago's West Ridge neighborhood. The victim, a 39-year-old Orthodox Jewish man, survived the attack. Amidst that backdrop, ex-acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tom Homan was interviewed by CBS's 60 Minutes over the weekend. He served as the acting director of ICE during a portion of former President Trump's administration. Trump, of course, has said that he would pursue the largest mass deportation in U.S. history. Homan, talking to 60 Minutes over the weekend, was asked about mass deportations, particularly of families.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Why should a child who is an American citizen have to pack up and move to a country that they don't know?
Because their parent obviously entered the country illegally, had a child knowing he was in the country illegally, so he created that crisis.
I had no idea ex-acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tom Homan was such a badass, but that's how you message on the issue of deportation, and you're going to hear a lot more of that, and that's going to be needed if Donald Trump wins next week. And finally, I would submit this to you, one of the most terrifying things you'll hear this week, maybe ever. It's about 3.5 minutes long. It comes from this account on X called Maha Alliance. That's Make America Healthy Again Alliance. 3.5 minutes. I think it speaks for itself. Listen to this.
Dear Kamala Harris, let's get one thing crystal clear. The vast majority of American men have no issue with electing a female president. Our issue lies solely with you. You were second in charge of California for 13 years.
As California's Attorney General, Harris promoted enforcement of a law that allowed prosecutors to seek jail time for parents of truant kids.
As a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
I thought that was crazy. I was like, how can you lock parents up?
If you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
I opened the door and I see at least 7 or 8 cops wanted to arrest me. As a matter of fact, they did.
And frankly, you know the prosecutors in my office who volunteered to do this? My homicide prosecutors, my gang prosecutors. And they went over there and I said, when you go over there, look really mean.
She had me arrested and prosecuted because my handicapped daughter was sick in the hospital and had missed some days of school.
I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. That person could be arrested. They could lose time from work and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community.
I lost my job and couldn't pay rent, and we got evicted.
Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed.
I became homeless. We had to move into a motel.
All because of the swipe of my pen.
I don't agree what Kamala Harris did to my mom, and I don't agree with what she's done to other parents as well.
You were second in charge of the United States for 4 years.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Inflation is hitting the highest level in 39 years. A record high number of illegal crossings.
Crime's been surging across the nation.
Huge spikes in homicide.
Could we be heading toward World War III?
After 17 years of failed leadership, you are now asking us to trust you as first in charge of our country.
I am concerned and focused on big issues. Elementary and middle school truancy is actually a big issue. If we're trying to save the state money. Because of truancy, California public schools lose $1.4 billion a year in funding. I want money.
My message to all Americans, do not trust Kamala Harris.
As men and protectors of women and children, you are simply a risk we are not willing to take.
Paid for by Maha Alliance and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
I'm not sure much more needs to be said than that. One of the most horrifying things you'll hear all week, this Halloween week. Hopefully that's not America's future a week from today. That'll do it for this Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.